And what's going on, everybody? Welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast. If you're watching on Rumble, YouTube, or, well, for now, before eventually we'll get listening to some of the content we'll get into in this podcast, probably won't be on YouTube for very long. But if you are on YouTube, that is my podcast logo there, the Check Your Brain podcast. I do appreciate you folks for watching this podcast. It's also an audio podcast as well, wherever you get your podcast. God, I gotta stop saying podcast at the beginning, but it is the Check Your Brain podcast, and my name is Tony Mazur. Hi, everybody. Welcome aboard. I appreciate you folks for listening and hopefully subscribing. I am on Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. If you want upwards of 20 to 25 podcasts a month, go there, check it out for as little as $3 a month. But if you don't feel like spending your money on me or checking out any other subscriptions, you should go over to Substack. But now my Substack, I am not on Substack. I should be, because I have a bunch of stuff I would like to get off my chest right now. But go to Substack and go check this out. She is my guest. It's Lisa D. Pasquale, and I really appreciate you being on here because I've been following you for a number of years. I've watched you on Gutfeld Show, other Fox News shows, heard you on a bunch of podcasts, and I really do appreciate you being on here with me.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. And kudos to you because we didn't go over name pronunciation and you got it exactly right.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I've gone to Chuck E. Cheese back in the day, and I remember Pasquale is one of the...
Oh my gosh, you made my day. Every time I try to tell people why Chuck E. Cheese is better than like Showbiz or Showtime pizza, I say, well, they have Pasquale.
Yeah, that's right. Do you remember that during COVID a couple of years ago that Chuck E. Cheese was trying to do the ghost kitchen, and they were putting out their pizza as Pasquale's Pizza and Wings on maybe like DoorDash or Grubhub or one of these or Uber Eats or something. It was like a ghost kitchen, so people go like, "Hey, I've never seen this Pasquale's place," and you get it, and you're like, "Oh, it's the garbage pizza they sell at Chuck E. Cheese when I was back in the 80s."
Good for them.
But that is your Substack, Get Bright. Go check it out at Get Bright. And of course, we'll talk about some of the books that you have. But let's get into it because it's been, 6 years since the Social Justice Warrior Handbook came out. And it seems to me that in those 6 years, you probably need 6 more chapters because of all the insanity that's going on right now.
Yeah, well, and also like I made up a ton of things like, oh, this will be funny and crazy that have, since come true.
Yeah. So one of the big things that we've experienced since 2017, since the book came out, and seeing you on all these podcasts, and I read the book years ago. I wish I read in ebooks. I don't have it the physical copy in front of me, but it was poignant. It's funny, but it got the point across.
Mhm.
But then over time, because that was right around the Ben Shapiro days, where it's like Ben Shapiro owns the college student, Ben Shapiro owns a millennial, and now those millennials are now in their 30s, and now they're making decisions with their money and everything. Now we have the Zoomer generation, and it seems like this is a new crop of people that I think could be a lot of additions for another book or a sequel to that book, because they have their own quirks. Well, I guess in your research and what you've been writing about, what are some of those stark differences from the millennials to the Zoomers now, and trying to communicate with them?
I mean, I think like as the generations have, I'm Gen X, and the millennials had some need for independence, and I've just been really surprised about Gen Z having like no interest in leaving the house, getting their driver's license, that sort of thing. And on their own, that doesn't matter that much, except for it's prolonging the need for independence. And as easy it would be to say Gen Z is the worst generation, I would have to say their parents are the worst generation. And that includes Gen X and, millennials. And like to me, when I was 16, like not only was it a requirement to get a job, like that first job that every kid gets, I wanted to, because that meant my own money in my pocket. That meant a reason to leave the house and drive every day. It meant my own car. And Gen Z just seems to have no desire to want to do that. I mean, they're not trying to get their driver's license, and you have to think that's because parents are giving them as much money as they want or need for their wants, taking them where they need to go. Or I heard the other day, like you can get like I got like a notification on Uber Eats, like Uber Teen, like you can set up an Uber account for your teenager.
Okay, so they can go everywhere, or they can, because I remember hearing about this in schools, that there were schools that were banning Uber Eats from being in the class. You know, you go to the cafeteria, you get the terrible pizza and the,
Mhm.
you know, the fiestadas or whatever we were getting back in the day, and the cartons of milk, and you're like, yeah, you know what, I could probably go for some, what about Arby's? Arby's sound good to you? And these kids are getting it delivered to the school, and you have the Uber Eats drivers like, looking for Aiden, I mean, you can find this. And they're like, yeah, no more Uber Eats. But that's
Mhm.
crazy what's going on now. And these kids don't have that ambition. I hate saying that because I'm a millennial myself, in my generation. I can go forever on talking about them, but
Mhm.
it it really did start with these Zoomers where there's not a lot of ambition right now. That's why
Mhm.
COVID wasn't as big of a deal as it would have been for when you and I were in high school. That they're like, oh, so we get to stay home and play video games more, and
Mhm.
okay, that's fine, it's no problem. Like you said, 16, you get your driver's license. That was a little bit of freedom. It almost
Mhm.
seems like a lot of Zoomers, a large chunk. I'm not trying to, you know, there's probably a lot of them watching this, but uh, there's not a lot of them that have that ambition to want to get off the couch. And it's like, why do I need a car? That means then I have more responsibility. I don't want that
Mhm.
responsibility. Is
Yeah.
that by design? Who knows?
Yeah, the only good Gen Zers are they all work at Chick-fil-A from what I can see.
Oh, that's true. That's a good idea. Well, my pleasure.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, so I think kind of like that's like the baseline is not wanting that freedom and independence. And so it's like if you're dealing with the generation that doesn't want it on the most personal level, then you can see how it must filter out to other things like, freely having TikTok on their phone and, giving up their data and not really caring about, lots of things like free speech and basically everything, that's in the news. I
Well,
mean,
and the
how can you
same with
convince someone
pornography too.
who's never made money and ask that cliched question, "Who is FICO and why am I giving him all my money?" If they don't experience in that until they're like 28 or 30 or, whatever age they get their worthless degree.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like that with pornography. I've talked about it a number of times, and I'm glad the conversation's being discussed more, but you know, back in the day, back in the 90s, and you know, find the Playboy and your, you know, under your dad's in a sock drawer or whatever that thing. But now the kids have that opportunity, and I hate saying kids because I'm talking
Mhm,
about teenagers, and I don't want to say I'm promoting this for other generations, but
mhm,
the fact that within two swipes of a thumb, you can have Pornhub on your phone. And I'm concerned about the men that, you know, the either they go a couple of different ways. And that's why I think the Andrew Tate and the Jordan Peterson stuff took off,
mhm,
because it didn't seem like there's a lot of direction. And these teenagers are saying, well, why go out on a date with a girl who's like, she's mid, she's a five, she's not really that, but I can find tens on my phone all day. It's like, well, yeah, there,
mhm,
you don't have a meaningful relationship with two porn stars on
mhm,
Pornhub. How about you have a meaningful relationship with the girl you're in calculus with? And I'm concerned what that's going to be, because we only have a small sample size of
mhm.
what that can be leading up into future generations.
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, the girls hold a lot of the responsibility for boys that have, this attitude. I mean, whether it's, what they've experienced with their parents getting a divorce and, moms making claims and dads making claims, and then girls kind of being afraid from like feminist Me Too movement, afraid of, what girls could say, down to helicopter parents and them putting off being rejected, whether it's by girls or by a teacher and, all that type of thing. I was actually just talking to someone about this like TikTok video that's going around about how to respond to guys that want to go Dutch on a date. And I actually thought the girl had like a good response to it. But the whole 50-50, that's like a feminist thing. Like, well, don't you want to be equals? Regardless of whether it's like about chivalry. But the girl actually had a good response, or at least an amusing response. If a guy was like, let's go 50-50, the girl should be like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I thought this was a date. I didn't know you just want to be friends. I thought that was a good response, even if the feminists are the ones that kind of were the first ones to really spoiling dating culture.
I want to ask you about feminism because I had that in my notes because I think a lot of it took on that like Rush Limbaugh kind of boomer feeling of like, oh, the feminazis are back again. And it kind of became a punchline for a little bit. And you're like, feminism, what, first wave, second wave, third wave, bra burning, Gloria Steinem, that kind of stuff. But you're starting to really see the roots start to take hold, and they're blossoming right now, but it's kind of getting a lot of dead fruit. And it seems to me that feminism is what helped cause a lot of the issues that we're seeing right now, especially in the trans movement that we're seeing now, that it's like, why can't women be in men's sports? And it's like, well, I think we're seeing it play out in real time right now. And when you're seeing these, large biological men who are identifying as women playing field hockey and knocking a puck into the face we saw last week in Massachusetts, to Leah Thomas, to Fallon Fox and other UFC fighters. And me personally, I don't like seeing women getting bruised by somebody who is a biological man. That's just me. That's just my thing. And what bothers me is I don't hear enough of the feminists speaking up. Are they afraid of being called TERFs? Are they afraid that they're going to lose everything right now? I mean, you would think that if your goal is to protect women, and now you're seeing this, especially when it comes to sports, but also in other areas and other factors, wouldn't you think more feminists want to be pro-women, or are they just afraid that they're going to be thrown out of their intersectional dinner parties and Christmas parties?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at like someone like J.K. Rowling, I mean, who's uncancelable, but is getting like a ton of heat. But I mean, I kind of feel like you really have no credibility as a feminist if you don't speak up for the basic issue when it comes to women in sports, because that was also they were big on Title X. I mean, when I first got into politics in 1999, working in DC, I mean, that was like a big issue, because they were getting rid of football teams because there's not a female equivalent to a football team. So if there's not, equal funding, then you get rid of the football team. Anytime a school tried to challenge that. So, I mean, they're taking, something like women's sports and like getting rid of women. This is an issue perfect for them. And the ones that, are silent are just crazy. I mean, then now we're kind of faced with, Caitlyn Jenner really being the best true feminist.
It's true. I mean, it's sad because I start to see this, and now when it comes to, and this will probably get flagged. It doesn't matter to me. I'm more free speech. I don't care about YouTube views or anything. But what we're seeing, you mentioned, we were talking about boys in high school, like teenage boys, and they're either going to porn, Marvel movies, or they go the opposite way and they listen to what Andrew Tate has to say. But then the direction for women now, and you're seeing these reports that what would they say, 1 in 5 or even 1 in 4 teenage girls are identifying as something queer, like LGBT. And the problem with a phase like goth when we were kids was you painted your fingernails, you wore fishnet stocking, you got a tattoo of Jack Skellington on your lower
and that's
back
just what
or
you
whatever.
did.
Yeah, exactly. But like all of that but there wasn't the real world consequences that we were seeing now. This is the problem, is we are now saying we are affirming your gender. Now you're taking certain things. There are some things that are phases, but when you have a phase that has real world consequences, that's what I'm very concerned with. And again, another one where I don't hear enough of these quote unquote radical feminists speaking up about it. They're staying very mum.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is looking for a connection, because a lot of them are, missing a connection, and that's like a built-in community, this trans or other community, something that's not, the tip on the typical spectrum. And then on top of that is we have really incentivized and monetized victimhood, and to be able to make yourself part of that has value. And like I said, you can't really, like, part of me does struggle with blaming Gen Z, because the generations older than them have created this world, that values being in another group, that values, you can't just say what your accomplishments are. It used to be that, it was more of like a talented Mr. Ripley world where you lied and said you came from a better background. And now, it's the opposite. I mean, you hear, congressmen talking about how poor they were and, how bad they have it. And now everyone, a lot of these kids are basically white, middle class, privileged kids, and they have to find something else that, make them a victim.
You can't just be a boring white person anymore.
Yeah, no, there's no community for that.
It's incredible. I mean, I've mentioned my generation. I'm 35, so I'm a millennial. I'm like I'm one of the early millennials that remembers at least going to Blockbuster and dial-up internet, and didn't have smartphones in high school, thank God. But what bothers me about my generation is it kind of started this madness of we're looking for answers, but we're looking in the wrong direction. Where my generation was the Harry Potter generation. It just seems that a lot of the women, they're like, I'm not going to church anymore, but I believe in the church of Hufflepuff or whatever. And then the Marvel movies. And I remember when the first Spider-Man came out in 2002. And I was in high school, and I'm looking at this going, this movie sucks. Yeah, it's great special effects, but there's nothing to this. There's no story. I know Spider-Man's going to save the day at the end of it. And here we are 21 years later, still the same garbage over and in my opinion, garbage, because there's no great storyline. And we don't have the rom-coms, that we don't have the good, the Pulp Fiction type of movies anymore. So our pop culture right now is being taken up by, what Real Housewives show are you watching?
Yeah.
Are you caught up on all your streaming? It's like we are rapidly losing any sort of American culture other than, hey, have you caught up on all your Netflix shows right now?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we talk about on my podcast,
what is that podcast, by the way?
Pop Culture Warriors. It's kind of like, in addition to just, reacting to the things that you brought up, but also talking about like the bright spots and, like Cobra Kai. I don't know if you watched that show.
Oh yeah.
So like, that's a bright spot. And, I think it's important to still highlight the good things. And I almost wonder, like when you're mentioning the binging and this caught up on series, like back in my day, we had to wait till the next week to see like what happened. You didn't have that week in between to like ruminate, and just having everything at your fingertips, being able to watch it all at once. You don't have that like thinking time, in between.
Yeah, exactly.
You should have my co-host on at some point. He was an artist for, I think, 25, 26 years for Marvel and DC comics.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was what's his name? I just heard him on a podcast recently.
Brett Smith.
Yes. I was listening to him. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to him. I'd love to have him.
And agrees with you about the storyline part.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would love to just like to see like a good movie. Instead, it's no, it's Star Wars, it's Marvel, or it's Pixar. And because I think that also plays a role when it comes to music as well in our culture. And if everything is so Taylor Swift, Beyonce, or anything that's on TikTok, what happened in the days of rock? I mean, I'm a few miles away from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame here in Cleveland, and we had the Rock Hall event over the weekend at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and there was no rock. I mean, there was Rage Against the Machine, but everything else was Missy Elliott, and it's not there. And that's what I'm kind of concerned about, because when I look at for Zoomers, at least we remember what it was like going to the Camelot music, the Sam Goody, the Coconuts, the Peaches. And we waited for on Tuesday, the new releases were coming out. And now you can get music that somebody puts it out and it's free. And or you can go to Spotify, you get a limited trial for like $10 a month, or YouTube Music for $10. And the days of, so what happens when you get things either dirt cheap or free, you stop appreciating it. So when it comes to art, I'm concerned our future generations are not really going to take it, not take the art seriously and just completely take it for granted.
Yeah. And I mean, the other part of that is, if there's a large group of people, say people on the right, conservatives, Republicans, whatever whatever you want to call yourself.
Non-leftists.
non-leftists who have saying, I'm opting out. Everything's garbage. I don't watch TV. I don't buy music. It's like, well, don't blame them if they don't make anything for you. You know?
True. Just make it yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
How long did they say, well, you don't like Twitter? Make your own Twitter. And then they did. Well, and then they shut down Parler.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about that next. Twitter now versus Twitter, say 2-3 years ago.
Mhm.
It's night and day, the difference. And it's not because there's more racism, that there's
Mhm.
more homophobia or anti-Semitism or anything. It's people are having conversations again, that there's character limits that you can completely exceed, especially if you're a blue check like we are. You can do, but we can have these more dissident conversations that we weren't able to have a couple of years ago, because if you said something like, say, for example, a certain thing you put over your face that never actually stopped a virus, didn't
Mhm.
actually work, or something you were going to put in your arm with a needle that didn't have the results that a lot of people expected, you could have been thrown off of these big tech platforms. Not saying it still can't happen, but out of all of them, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they're still kind of on one end. Twitter/X, whatever they want to call it now, I'm still going to call it Twitter. It's a much different place now, and I think it's for the better. I think Elon saved it from really just completely turning into absolute state government propaganda like it was for the past couple of years.
Yeah, and the media keeps trying to, own him on what it's worth now versus what he paid for it. And he has repeatedly said, he didn't buy it as an investment. And it's someone who has enough money, and he's not a conservative. He might be based, but someone that makes that much money from subsidies. And it's funny, I read an article many, many years ago, like saying it was a play on his last name, which I'm surprised it doesn't happen more. But it was something like, I don't like the smell of this musk steel or something like that. But solar panels, EV, all that kind of stuff, is all highly subsidized. But he gets a pass on that, which is fine, because I think at the end of the day, he's probably done more for free speech than anyone else, certainly than say the ACLU. But I think they're also, in most people's minds, there's still that kernel of, especially if you're Xing under your own name. What if I'm screenshot? What if I have a day job? That kind of thing.
Well, and that leads me to my next topic, which is probably the biggest topic going on right now, but I not necessarily Israel, Palestine, all that going on. It's the response to it.
Mhm.
And those who are on social media, either pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, because they're starting to get to a point where they're like, so I posted something like from the river to the sea on my Facebook page, and I just got fired today. What the
Mhm.
heck? Like, what's going on here? This is cancel culture. This is McCarthyism. And I'm just like,
You made the rules.
you made your bed, you sleep in it. You
Mhm.
said anybody who had a dissenting opinion on certain elections or certain viruses and lockdowns and mandates and certain this and certain that over the couple of years should be banished from all society. The Overton window is shut. You're completely outside of it. Now, this is a strange wedge issue. A little bit for conservatives because there's a little bit more of like the neocon pro-Israel, and then you have more of the the Scott Hortons of the world, the anti-war. So there's a little bit that goes on kind of on the more libertarian to conservative circles, but it's not as big as what's happening on the left side. And
Mhm.
they're kind of drinking or taking their own medicine right now.
Mhm.
And they are like, what have you seen from your perspective? Is this an example? Like, how do you feel about it? Is this a true example of cancel culture? Do you think that they set the rules, they set the standards, and they have to abide by them? Or
Mhm.
what can we do here? What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, part of me is, yeah, you shouldn't be fired for, the views you hold. Something that I have experienced in my life, in the conservative movement. But it's kind of like with the lawfare and going after Trump, the way that they are. They, made these rules. We've had to live under these rules. So what's good for the goose. But I also, I love seeing the infighting among Democrats because they don't know what to do. Because in the past, they've always been really good about, you know, the pro-life Democrats not really getting the same platform, and they kind of know their place. In this case, the pro-Hamas Democrats kind of don't know their place in the party, and it is a minority because it's a minority of Americans and a minority of people. But it is a minority in the Democrats, and they don't seem to know their place. That they're not supposed to be, shouting this from the rooftops. And you'll love to see it.
It's amazing because it's such a wedge issue for them. The way they look at, I think, your normal leftist to your college leftist to, I think anybody who kind of is in more of like the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders area, is they look at what's happening and they see the skin color, of course, and they go, well, Palestinians are a little bit darker skinned than the Israelis, the Jewish people. So therefore, it seems like the Jewish people are more the oppressors over the Palestinians and this and this. But they're afraid of going on social media and because they're like, oh, what? I can't say anything politically or socially on here. And I'm like, well, you said I wasn't allowed to, so it doesn't seem like you should be able to if we're going to play the same rules here. Mm-hmm. But what Democrats are going through it, and this is a big wake up call for a lot of these donors at colleges that were people who are Jewish. And like kind of more Democrat. They didn't like Donald Trump. They didn't like, Mitt Romney or anything. And they realized the people that they had been funding and supporting are the ones turning on them and calling for their own literal genocide. And they're like, what the hell is going on right now? And it's fascinating to see this in person. Obviously, it's very dangerous what's going on. But as a pundit, as a comedian, as a podcaster, you look at it from this scope and saying, I never thought it would get to this point like this quickly, that now the left has to defend their own cancel culture mobs.
Yeah. And I mean, it's happening so fast. I mean, over the weekend in DC, I had posted on my Substack, getright.substack.com, which you won't see on Twitter. Elon needs to still do something about the shadow banning of Substack. I get his point, but help a girl out. But long live the Intifada, there's a literal insurrection where they're hanging an enemy's flag on the White House gates. The Secret Service is doing nothing. And this also happened, at the Capitol and at the Cannon Building, where it was like the legal definition of an insurrection. And, the media is totally silent. And this is against their guy. We're not talking about Trump in the White House. This is their guy in the White House, them smearing red paint on the walls.
Yeah, this is, well, I've noticed that there's a lot of happy talk that's been going on the last couple of years. Of course, about a year and a half ago, gas prices were $5, $6, $7 a gallon. And all we kept hearing about was, yeah, but the economy is actually roaring better than ever. And the way they're looking at it in the White House, the Biden White House, is that they're just going to happy talk their way up until the next election. Don't believe your lying eyes. Oh, yeah. What was it? The Paul Krugman report a couple of weeks ago. He says, well, if you take out food and energy and used cars and this and that, the economy has actually roared back. Like, oh, so you mean the essentials are, well, let's take those away. And because you want something else, it means the economy is back. But
have you seen the price of Russian caviar? It's dropped big time.
Well, you know what? Look, I'm a little bit of a snob because I have those little bone spoons there.
Oh yeah.
But it's incredible, and we're seeing that now. And what we've seen as we're going to wrap up 2023 here in the next little under 2 months. Some of the top stories of the year should have been huge stories, and if it was Donald Trump in the office, it would have been massive stories. And I think the two biggest stories of the year have been, well, outside of this, but internally in America, have been East Palestine, Ohio, which is about an hour or so away from me, and Maui. And you don't hear about either one of them because in Maui, it was a Democrat governor, Democrat mayor, Democrat politicians, Democrat president. And you've had upwards of over 1,000 people that were killed and their homes completely taken over, displaced. And it's nothing. It just goes away. And East Palestine was, there was a little bit of a blowback, and Trump bought McDonald's, and then Mayor Pete came there the next day and everything was great. there are people still there who can't drink their own water. There, I happen to know somebody. I talked to somebody recently who is a construction guy whose job it is to dig up the contaminated dirt in East Palestine, Ohio, transfer it somewhere else, and burn it into the sky. That's something that's going on. And
Yeah.
you don't
Where are
hear
the
anything about it.
environmentalists?
No, where are the
They're at the
no, where
museums.
are any of them? And
Mhm.
it really is, the White House is in conjunction with corporate media to suppress a lot of these stories, just like what we're seeing over the weekend. How do you have on the White House lawn where they're putting fake blood all over the gates of the White House? There's 300 to almost a million people, 300,000 to almost a million people at DC over the weekend carrying swastikas. Now, I heard a couple of years ago, if anybody at a Trump rally, even if it was a Fed, if it was Patriot Front that had a swastika or any Nazi thing, that meant everybody is culpable, everybody's responsible, and everybody's a Nazi. Well, how is it that this wasn't a million Nazi march over the weekend? It's because corporate media said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We got focus on Trump is in court.
Yeah. I mean, and these are people that will happily take, you know, the views, not say, oh, I didn't even know they were there. I mean, these are people like, yeah, that's what I believe. And still they're not what they say they are. If you listen to, you know, the media and how they want to couch it, if they even, you know, talk about it. I mean, I think part of it is that they don't know how to respond because they have been kind of drinking their own Kool-Aid for so long. I mean, you talked about Maui and, you know, Oprah saying, well, I don't understand. I offered $1 million or whatever she said she was going to give, and I got all this blowback. You know, they're just so out of touch at this point. They've so isolated themselves, whether it's like news sources or just their community, that I think they just don't like the democratization of a response. You know what I mean? So it used to be like, the only thing anybody could talk about when it came to an Oprah response was what People Magazine told them was the correct response. And now people can get on X and get on Facebook and wherever else, you know, make reaction videos on TikTok and Instagram, and, you know, have an opinion that can't be, you know, a PR coordinated, you know, response from Oprah's team.
Do you think in the next year, as we're right around this time, as a year from now, that the election in 2024, do you think we're going to have another big tech crackdown?
You know, I mean, I don't know what the crackdown will be, because I also think like there's also a minority of people, you know, on Twitter. I think probably we'll see it on Facebook because that's like the place where, you know, people, grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, you know, see photos and remember birthdays and that sort of thing. And I think it's still a minority of people that are on Twitter, and, you know, other things. It won't work as well though, I think, because of Twitter files, you know, thanks to Elon. I think people kind of know that. I think that, you know, a lot of the social media companies that think they're doing themselves and Democrats a favor by having warnings, content warnings, sensitive warnings, are really just saying, look at this. Here's something that's probably true. So it's kind of like, you know, back in the 90s, you know, the warning explicit lyrics label ended up being like, it wasn't cool if the album didn't have that.
Yeah, thanks, Tipper Gore.
Yeah, exactly. A Democrat-led senators' wives that were bored. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. You know, a year's not that far out. So, I mean, I'm still an old, so I'm kind of like, well, what will the kids be doing? Because I mean, I saw something the other day say like TikTok's not cool anymore with the kids.
Yeah, what's the next thing going to be? We're going backwards. We're all getting Zanga accounts again.
Yeah,
MySpace.
exactly. So, you know, I don't know what the thing will be. Maybe it'll be, you know, the video gaming world, like, you know, kids connecting there. And I don't know if there's like it's not Sims, but there's something like Sims that someone had told me about, and not Meta, but something, you know, like that. but yeah, I think we'll probably still see it on Facebook. And then as far as, X and stuff, I mean, like it was announced this week, or not announced, but reported last week that like Hollywood studios have accounts to respond to like bad reviews of things. This is not new. When I worked in politics, we had that too. Um, so I don't know if they're going to up that. I mean, certainly with AI, I think you can do it in a better way than, um, you know, Biden fan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They can come up with personalities and all that kind of thing. So I don't know. Maybe now I'm kind of like talking myself into what the answer is. Maybe it is the AI part where you'll start to see, that sort of thing, whether it's in customer service or, um, you know, in your social media and other sort of research. I guess Google, if that counts. Certainly, people are like, do your own research. It's like, but can you?
Yeah, well, and it's also going to depend on the AI. I believe
Mhm.
Elon announced that, was it Grok or something?
Yeah,
Grok?
missed opportunity if Gronk doesn't do ads for this.
Yeah, exactly. He should be. And to go like, what? I thought it was
Yeah.
my thing. We need him and Travis Kelce and more commercials. That's what I believe in it.
Yeah, one of my favorite media appearances ever, other than this one, obviously, um, was I was on Charles Payne with Gronk.
Oh,
I'm
really?
like, oh man, I'm gonna score this one. I'm gonna be so smart.
When I used to work in media and I used to cover, I was in the Patriots locker room. I shouldn't say this, but I gotta say, I'm a straight man. I am a married man, but I was standing next to Gronk where he was completely nude, and I'm like, it's a good looking man right there. Gotta say. I mean, that's one, if someone wanted to trade eyes with me, they would, I'd make a lot of money. But anyways,
Yeah, well,
stupid.
a friend of mine, one of the co-founders of LGBT for Trump, um, basically said he will never forgive me for the fact that I got to meet Gronk at Fox News and he didn't.
That's great. Yeah. Well, actually, that's a good transition, I should say.
Mhm.
No pun intended. These other groups because you're seeing this past week, Rashida Tlaib had an entire ad that came out against Joe Biden, someone who she endorsed just a couple of years ago, that he's been too soft on Israel and protecting Zionist wars and everything. And you're starting to see a little bit of a groundswell against Joe Biden, more of the establishment Democrats. Now, a couple of years ago, as we saw with James Clyburn in South Carolina, you had Bernie Sanders, you had Elizabeth Warren, you had Pete Buttigieg, you had Amy Klobuchar, and then all of a sudden in one week, it's like, we are supporting Joe Biden for president. We think he's going to be the one to guide us. Blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
And they all kind of fell in lockstep. But now you're starting to see this in the last couple of years. You have the libs of TikTok, gays against groomers. You're seeing like it could be anyone from Waka Flocka Flame who's supporting Trump, and you're starting to see more people a little bit more vocal either against Joe Biden or in favor of Donald Trump.
Mhm.
Do you think, as somebody who's written and been in politics for a while, do you think any of this is going to really move the needle? Or is this, by the time we get to 2024, we get to August, September, October, that we're going to get back into everybody's like either team Yankees or team Red Sox?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably after like at least our primary's over, I think the Democrats, at the end of the day, they all will still be in lockstep. Whether that's, they keep Biden or, he gracefully decides to bow out. There are some people, in that camp that truly believe Newsom will be, the nominee in 2024. Um, but, Kamala Harris is definitely, insurance. I think when it comes to whether or not
She's like if you got the
Biden's
general for insurance.
yeah. um, but the thing, not so much the separation, because conservatives also have, this in them. They're like, well, why does it have to be this for this? And I think they forget that, like, I remember a long time ago, I went to the Newseum, which is since closed in DC. It was like a museum of journalism. And they had a bunch of campaign buttons, and they had like Italian Americans for Reagan, Iranian Americans for Reagan, Irish Americans for Reagan. So it's not like this is a new phenomenon that people have liked to identify their group. And I think it's, especially important, particularly for feminists, for gays, for, those types that are seeing something in the news that is the opposite of how they feel, and they don't want to be, paid in that light. I mean, when it comes to Italian Americans, I personally don't agree, because I think the whole mafia thing makes us look really cool. Like National Italian American Foundation, they're against the portrayal of non-historic mafia characters in movies. But, like I said, I'm not against it. So I understand like the gays for groomers, and that, to me that makes sense, that they'll want to do it. I hope that by 2024, like we always do, the primary has always been sort of like Thunderdome, and, we all, come together. I like DeSantis. I like Trump. I will vote for whoever the nominee is.
Same. I mean, that's what it comes down, because I've noticed that, and I know you've been on Twitter. You've probably seen this. The team DeSantis has been very, very vocal, and it's kind of turning a lot of people off, because it seems like a clique that's been going on. And I like Christina Pushaw. I like Max Nordau. I think they do good work. John Cardillo. I think they're good people, but it's over the top, and it's almost insulting, because there's a lot of people who are like, I like Ron DeSantis, but it's not his time yet, or I like Ron DeSantis, but we have to back Trump at this point with all the indictments. They're coming after him because they're coming after us and everything. And it just seems that the way a lot of the team DeSantis people are looking at it is like, are the voters stupid? We have our guy right here. And I'm like, you can't really talk down to your audience here. It just seems that it's to me, just what I've seen, and they could disagree, but it just seems very insulting that you're attacking the people who are like, I mean, that's their choice. Isn't the customer always right?
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, kind of like the audacity for anyone not Trump to think they're going to be treated differently than Trump by the media and by Democratic groups, to me is just like confounding. I mean, you would think DeSantis folks of anyone would know, after the whole Disney stuff and how that played out, they would know that's how it works. And the CRT education stuff, they would know that's how this works. And it's going to be the same for you. It doesn't matter. The reason Trump has legal problems is to prevent him in 2024. I guarantee you somehow there'll be some legal problem for DeSantis or Vivek or who else? Chris Christie. I mean, Chris Christie's already had some. It's going to try to be equal, that they all have a fair chance. Nikki Haley, I mean, they're all kind of polling the same. The only front runner is Trump. So, I don't want to anger people. I think Kurt Schlichter, who is definitely Team Trump, probably has the healthiest attitude. And, he'll routinely throw out a tweet that he will vote for whoever the nominee is.
Yeah. Yeah, he said that. He's like,
not clear for a lot of people. It's not clear for a lot of supporters of both sides.
Yeah, Kurt is like, I would support Trump. I just don't think he's going to win. And I'm like, probably that might be the case. We've seen strange things happen in recent elections. That's all I'll say, YouTube. But I think also the RFK Jr. movement has been fascinating to watch, because, I listen to people who get it and think that he takes votes away from Trump, and others who say he takes away votes from Biden. I know Michael Knowles has said that he would probably take more votes away from Biden, because you have the old school boomer Democrats who are want that fondness for the old Kennedy Democrat Party. Like, I'm a union guy. We cared. We had our pennant that said Kennedy for president 60. But I don't think that it's not the same party.
Mhm.
And I think what RFK Jr. does is he peels away votes from independent voters who may have leaned towards Trump by saying, like, look, Joe Biden is a corrupt career politician, everything. At least with Trump, gas prices were $2 or whatever. But this RFK, he says a couple of things that I like in my favor. The thing is,
Mhm.
what I've been saying is, if you're somebody who would support RFK, but if it wasn't for him, it would be Trump. RFK is a 90s liberal, is what he
Mhm.
is. He's you're not conserving anything with RFK. He's an environmentalist. He's everything like, I mean, he's a 1994 Democrat. It's just he didn't change. His party changed, and he's
Mhm.
just still right here. So that's why he almost looks conservative compared to the rest of the party. But
Mhm.
make no mistake, he's still a liberal.
Yeah, for sure. I can't remember who I was watching the other day. Someone smarter than me. It might have been like, I never thought I would say this, Russell Brand, was talking about how they've moved, on the spectrum, the left so far over that someone like RFK Jr. seems like a moderate.
Yeah, I
When
mean,
really he hasn't moved. They've just moved what is considered leftism, normal leftism, like so far, over. And you know, and then they kind of have done the same on the other side, where someone like Trump is now a right wing radical conservative. They've like
mhm.
overdefined it on both sides. Um, but I find it hard to believe the people that would give Trump a chance that maybe would go RFK Jr. At some point, the polling numbers are going to be like, wait, this is too important. Come November, 6th or whatever day it is, to go into the voting booth. And I don't want to say waste your vote, but if they're, already sort of willing to vote for Trump, I think would not want to, vote in that direction.
No, that's what I did with Ron Paul in 2012. I looked at this. I actually looked at the ballot because I thought Mitt Romney had a decent response after Benghazi in 2012.
Hmm.
But then I'm just like, Mitt Romney? Really? Am I gonna? No, I'm not gonna do this. And I look down the ballot and I see independent Ron Paul. Yep, I don't care. I know this election's not gonna go the way I want it to. And that
Hmm.
election, if you think about it, and I know you've probably documented this on your Substack or any of your writings. If you think about what's happened since then, it's a way different country. I mean, Barack Obama ran and he still didn't believe in same-sex unions and everything. And
Hmm.
same with Hillary Clinton in 2008. Yet a couple of years later, you have Occupy Wall Street, which I think changed politics forever. That
Hmm.
you now finally had these corporate, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan loving CEOs had to start getting the millennials with the purple hair and the nose rings and the facial tattoos to be working HR. And they're like,
Hmm.
oh, we're kind of getting held hostage. Then you had the 2012 election. Then you had in 2013, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. Then you had Michael
Hmm.
Brown. Then you had the BLM movement rise. Then you had the LGBT stuff by 2015, Burgeville. And ever since then, that election and right around that time, that 2011, 2012, ever since then, it just seems to kind of has gone completely wacko, completely SJW. Why you had to
Hmm.
write a book about it because of all this wackiness the last decade. And I think it was Jack Posobiec. I don't know if he said it or he retweeted somebody. And it was a great point. He said a lot of this wokeness began in around 2009, 2010 on Tumblr with the show Glee, because there have
Hmm.
been shows where you've had gay characters, and you go all the way to Soap with Billy Crystal back in the 70s. There have been gay characters. There's been special episodes that we watched after school specials in the 80s and everything. But Glee was that show where it seemed like not only am I I'm not saying me, but not only am I a fan of Glee, I
But
identify with Glee. It is my show. I've embraced Glee. And if
mhm.
anybody doesn't like Glee, you're a homophobe, you hate gays, you hate this and this. And ever since then, it just seems that we've now done that with these massive pop culture figures. If you rip on Beyonce, get ready,
Mhm.
batten down the hatches, Taylor Swift, any of these. And ever since then, it seems
Lizzo.
like Lizzo's a huge one too. Well,
Mhm.
sorry, no pun intended.
I
Um,
think it was intended.
well, it could be. but ever since then, it just seems that this whole SJW thing has just gone completely wacky, and you can't have sensible conversations. That's why you need a book like the Social Justice Warrior Handbook.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the other thing I think is that if you were a social justice warrior, I think to some point, even when I wrote the book, I mean, I think it had already started. Maybe I just didn't write it with this intention. Um, if you were a justice warrior, your job was being an activist. And something the left has always been way, way smarter at is you do your job, what you go to school for: marketing, business, uh, other jobs. And you make your activism part of your job. And so this is how they've basically taken over corporation. This is how you get Dylan Mulvaney, as the spokesperson for Bud Light without anybody on a board seeming to notice it. Teachers, school, every like board elections, all that kind of stuff. Activism is not their job. It's what they use their job for.
They play the
And
long game.
conservatives have always, had the laissez-faire, like, oh, I don't bring that stuff to work, and go and do the type of job that they, want to do. And we end up wondering why we're always behind, why we're behind in schools and Hollywood and, other major institutions, things that are, as Andrew Breitbart said, politics is downstream from culture. And I talk about pop culture a lot, but culture really is all those other things. It's anything that's not happening in DC. And we've, let the left take over it and think that we can bury our heads in the sand, rather than do the same thing. And I get it. Like, it's hard because you do risk, you're going to be, in the minority, wherever you go, whether it's, arguing on a college campus or, arguing about the values of Glee. And I think because they like the Glee fans have made it so much a part of their personality, they don't know how to argue ideas anymore. Because you're not saying whether or not Glee is a good show, you're saying, I don't like you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. And we're, it's November, and I just have a couple more things, and I'll let you go on with your day and get ready for birthday week here.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, what, 3 o'clock? It's almost dark.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is dark actually right
Is it
behind
dark
me.
there?
You're probably watching. So it is Thanksgiving coming up in a couple of weeks, and I don't understand this new thing. Well, it seems like it's a new thing where all these online progressives are like, well, I'm either skipping Thanksgiving this year because my racist uncle's a Donald Trump fan and we get into it every year. I'm like, why are you getting into it in the first place? It's Thanksgiving. I thought we all sit at the table and we all eat and hey, how's work going? Hey, I saw you did this. That's really cool. And you kind of put aside your differences. You put aside any political or social, however you feel about marijuana or abortion or anything, and you sit around going, this is family. We all got together and this is great. Instead, a couple of years ago, I remember there was this whole laundry list of things to bring up that if your racist father or uncle says something, that you have a snapback right, like, for what? Well, we call it Indigenous Peoples Day and Christopher Columbus and blah, blah, blah. And then you go, okay, you ruin the meal. So what advice can you give us for those of us who may have this progressive relative? And I'm not saying I do, but if anybody who's out there has that progressive relative who wants to sit at the table and start debating politics, what can you tell us? What advice can we use to clap back, as the Zoomers would say?
To clap back. Well, I
No
mean,
cap.
I think I mentioned in the book that, spoiler, mind your manners, because you're the one that they don't want there. Right. So as far as like, clapping back for Thanksgiving, I think one of the ways to do it is to, rather than normalize them, do the opposite and just kind of like, we're here with our family. We're here with grandma who, who knows how many years she has on this earth. Why are you hurting grandma's feelings? Why do you want to talk about this? Like, what's wrong with you? Or, the whole purpose of SJW Handbook is to laugh at them, because they're the ones that, aren't normal. And I think that conservatives tend to do that too much to normalize, like, starting from the beginning, like the pro Hamas group. Like, this is not a normal segment of society. Even if I'd love to say, it's normal segment of Democrats. Democrats need to do more to, get their people in line, since that's normally what they do. But stop normalizing like these weirdos. Treat them like weirdos at Thanksgiving, and just be like, what are you even talking about? No one wants to talk about that, you know?
I can't even now. Luckily, we're a little more like-minded in my family, but it doesn't really get brought up. Uh,
Hmm.
again, it's usually somebody makes a fart joke at the table
Hmm.
or something. It's not a big deal.
Hmm.
And now again, I don't have like a whole there's not the blue-haired cousin or whatever, and
Hmm.
then they start getting into an argument at the table. It's like we all know in my family to just put our differences aside if we have any, uh,
Hmm.
and not bring them up at the table. It's not appropriate. At what point did we decide in the last decade that it is appropriate to? I thought it was the whole thing. You don't talk politics or religion at the table, and instead it's like, here's my religion. My religion is science, and you don't believe in science, so therefore you're attacking my religion. I'm like, pass the stuffing. No, no, no,
Yeah.
no, the one that was in the bird, please. Yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
should
I
be.
mean, that's what the debates are usually about, like cornbread stuffing, regular stuffing, in the bird, outside the bird. Is macaroni and cheese a Thanksgiving side?
Exactly. And you going through for sandwiches, and is this a sandwich? Is that a sandwich? That's the biggest
Mhm.
argument at my Thanksgiving is
Or
if we
best
the hot
best
dog is a
Thanksgiving
sandwich.
leftovers, is it like all the recipes you see on Food Network made with the leftovers, or is it just having Thanksgiving dinner again?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's and what time do you eat? So, like, the argument I have with my wife is that she wants to have dinner at like 2 or 3, and my family is usually about 5 or 6. So,
Mhm.
what do we do? Well, if you eat it early, then you could take a nap. But I don't want a nap. I want to drink and have a good time and watch football and
Cranberry
whatever.
in the shape of the can, or fresh cranberry?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, these
exactly. See,
are the
those.
normal arguments. I'm not against arguing by any means, especially in my family, but we need to have the normal arguments, not, how many genders are there? What kind of suffering did this turkey and go through? Was it on indigenous land? Did we acknowledge the indigenous land that we're on before this meal? Um,
Exactly. Have we burned indigenous ropes in a ceremony outside next to the deep fried turkey?
mhm. Well, I mean, one thing that I remember, if you're a Rush fan, Rush used to always talk about the Thanksgiving story on Thanksgiving, and the whole purpose of Thanksgiving, it wasn't. It was like all of these people from unique backgrounds coming together, to celebrate a harvest. And I think, if anything, the reason that a lot of people won't be celebrating Thanksgiving this year is because it's too damn expensive.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I think maybe, we could, all agree on.
Well, and the last thing I wanted to say, speaking of food and everything, is you look fantastic, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You've kept like I know you lost what, over 100 pounds, right?
It's closing in maybe in the next week or two, on losing 150 pounds.
Holy mackerel, 150. And
Hmm.
you were able to do that because I remember you started this journey before COVID. And then,
Hmm.
of course, what happens during COVID is, hey, we're going to keep the liquor stores and the grocery stores and the fast food places open, but you can't go to the gym, you can't go to church, you can't go to
Hmm.
NA or AA meetings or anything like that. Yet you're one of the few success stories I've seen of people that are like, no, I'm going to keep this off and I'm going to continue it. Everybody else just like, yeah, you know what? Should I go to Cool Ranch or the taco Doritos? What sounds better?
You also can't talk about obesity being a comorbidity in COVID deaths. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a journey, as they say. It's also, I think I have a unique perspective, like we were talking about Lizzo, in that, I do feel bad in the way that sometimes people on the right talk about, other people, when it comes to that sort of thing. Because I think that we have to be factual, and then also be, supportive. I mean, I got hate the other day from someone on Twitter, because it was something about Fetterman. And to me, I have to say, to even make a joke about somebody's body shows like how far I've come. But it was like a picture of Fetterman and, his little chicken legs. And I said, someone shouldn't, if you're going to wear shorts, don't skip leg day. And someone was like, maybe you should take your own advice, and tweeted all these photos of what I looked like, a couple years ago. And, at first I was just like hurt, but then I was like thinking about this guy who took the time out of his day and like, searched for all these photos, cropped them out. They all look really nice, together. And it's like, who is this loser? But, I would say some advice for conservatives. And I don't mean like random trolls, like feel free to make fun of their appearance. They will of you. But when you see the people talking about healthy at any size and all of that, I think it's good to be factual about, science and the risks and that sort of thing, but also be supportive. And the best way to do that is to, support someone like me that did it and buy my books.
And yes, exactly. And like you you
It's a long
didn't
way to
do
get there.
you didn't do so by like, this wasn't gastro, this was all you, right?
No, I had gastric bypass in 2018, and it's like the thing is like I know it's cliche to talk about things being tools, but I will say that Chris Christie and I had the same surgery, and it's whatever you do with it, and at a certain point you reach a plateau, and that's when I would do something like add in a personal trainer that I have twice a week, because it's always going to be something, and especially now as I'm like getting older and I'm middle aged, as a woman, there's always going to be an easy way out, and a harder way to keep having success. So I part of that is things that I tell myself that I didn't take an easy way out, but obviously I did have a leg up, and I think people shouldn't be ashamed to investigate those types of things if they think it can help them, because at the end of the day, it's it could save their life.
Really can. And which I love when you mention about Lizzo is when you see all these like Adele and Lisa Lampanelli and all these, like,
Mhm.
especially women who lose a lot of weight, and then their fans are like, "Oh, I liked you better when you were
I
fat,"
know.
and all of them are like, "I should have done this years ago." And so it's like, okay, so you lost a couple of body positive fans, but
Mhm.
let's see, what would you rather have? Rabid body positive fans, or I don't know, being able to live and see your feet?
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's a good balance right there. But
Yeah.
congratulations on that, and I'm glad you're able to keep it. Do you have any vices? Do you still like, or is there something you see and you're like, nope, 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 not gonna do that. I'm gonna
Yeah, I
keep
mean, I
walking.
try not to, like, have it in the house, or because it's kind of like, have you seen that extra toasty Cheez-Its?
Yes, I've seen those. Yes.
Yeah, if they're like, an open extra toasty Cheez-Its is an empty extra toasty Cheez-Its. I mean, obviously, with my surgery, I can't, physically eat an entire box, but, it's amazing if you have healthy food in your house, you generally just eat healthy food. As far as, yeah, I'm like a salty girl, like,
You
my
like savory.
yeah, my deathbed food would probably be homemade Chex Mix. So
Yeah, that
guess
sounds
what? I
good.
don't make homemade Chex Mix.
Yeah, that does sound good, especially right around this time when everyone wants to put. It's like, well, I have Chex Mix, but I also have powdered sugar and a little drizzle of chocolate and M and
Mhm.
M's, and you're like, oh, so you just made candy, is what you
Yeah.
did.
Well, and also, I think the other thing is it helps to surround yourself with people with similar goals, right? So my boyfriend is also very healthy. He's one of those weirdos that like he can have like a box of cookies in the house and will eventually have to throw them away because they're stale, like not because he doesn't eat it late at night. Weird, total weirdo. He works out and all that kind of stuff. I mean, and not just, a partner, but it's something that I think people should look for in a partner, and in friends, and, people with similar goals, whether it's health, financial, career, that sort of thing. There's some book, I think it was like you're the sum of like the 3 or 5 people you surround yourself with. Um, and I think that's true virtually and in real life, whether it's someone that you follow. And I think that's probably where some of the heartache comes from Adele and Lizzo fans. Is this was someone that was kind of like validating their choice in their life. And then it's not like, oh, why'd you sell us out? It's more of like, why am I having this feeling that I'm not doing the right thing?
Yeah. Well, see, I have the opposite problem of your boyfriend, is that I'm kind of an enabler. Is
Yeah.
that for a long time I had a very good metabolism where I can go out and eat White Castle burgers and drink a
Mhm.
6-pack of beer. And I'm like, I lost weight today. What's going on? It's not so much anymore. I just remember playing softball it was about a year ago. And my brother and my brother's 3.5 years younger than me. And one of our teammates is pointing to like this 20-year-old, like former Amish kid who's on our team. And he goes, "You see those two Mazurs over there?" And the guy is like, "Yeah." He's like, "They're bad influences. Don't listen to them. If they
Mhm.
tell you to drink something, don't drink it. If they tell you to eat something," I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So, but that's the problem, is that we're in that time of year where I would love to do dry January or sober
Mhm.
October, but then it's just like there's football, there's birthdays, there's Halloween, there's Thanksgiving, right
Mhm.
after it's Christmas and New Year's. January will come around and I'll end up cutting back like I did last year, lost about
Mhm.
15 pounds or so. It's that social atmosphere, but it's the company you keep. But
Yeah, I
the
mean, guys are
weight,
the worst because it'll be like, "Oh my god, how do you lose 20 pounds?" It's like, "I just stopped drinking soda." Um,
that's my
but,
problem, is the
you
beer.
could always, instead of writing off all of Thanksgiving to Christmas to New Year's, you save it for the holidays.
Yeah, that's true. And then you just get it out of the way. And yeah, my problem is it's not so much the food, it's the booze. And it's like,
Mhm.
it's not that I have an issue. It's, yeah, I'm just around people that will drink a couple of beers, and I don't like the light beers because I'm just gonna have to urinate every 5 minutes. I like the heavy, the 10%, the Christmas flavored beers. And the
Mm.
problem is, I'm like, oh, put on a couple of more because I decided I want to have a 6-pack last night. So, but I don't drink during the week or anything like
You
that.
can quit
But
whenever you want, I got it.
but kudos to you for keeping it off, especially around this time of year. And if you want to enable Lisa a little bit more, please go subscribe to her on Substack, buy her books,
Mhm.
follow her on Twitter here at Lisa DEP. She just followed me. I thought I was following you for years. Like I kept seeing, either you were just popping up or I followed you. I may have unfollowed you years ago by accident. And
By
uh,
accident, that's what they all say.
well, I mean, Twitter, the old Roth days of Twitter were a little strange. It was
Mhm.
the Wild West of shadow banning and
Yeah.
unfriending. And I get people like I would see, I'm like, I got blocked by this person. I know you personally, and they're like, I didn't block you. What happened? Oh, I probably just muted you twice, and it blocks me automatically. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But
Mhm.
yes, please go enable Lisa by subscribing to her Substack, buying her books. Go to YouTube and go check out the podcast Pop Culture Warriors. Anything else? Any other plugs other than the books? Here's some of the other books over on Amazon if you're watching on the YouTube and Rumble pages. Some of the other books that you can
Mhm.
purchase from her.
Yeah,
Actually,
speaking of, like, there not being any rom-coms, I don't just walk the walk. I said, "Well, I'm gonna write a rom-com, with a conservative bent." So that's what I did, and, no one bought it, but, um, that's not true. It looks like
starring
9 people
Lacey
bought it.
Chabert. She goes back to her hometown and runs into her Donald Trump supporting father, played by Alan Alda,
Yeah.
only on Hallmark.
Yeah. Uh,
Well, that's
and if you want
great.
the real story behind CPAC, Finding Mr. Righteous, that was when I ran CPAC for many years. Um,
I remember that. That's why you were the one who introduced Trump on stage, right?
yes, and then I was fired for it. For one of many reasons, not with anybody involved with CPAC today, but, turning CPAC into a circus by having, someone like Donald Trump, speak.
Were you there the classic Rush Limbaugh one?
I introduced Rush Limbaugh. That's the benefit of being the director. It's be like, who gets to introduce the biggest speaker? Oh, I think I will do it.
That Rush Limbaugh speech, I remember watching that, and I was just, my hair was standing up. I was so excited. It was 2009. It's right when Obama became president, and he's there at CPAC. And like, I'll still watch that speech. It's right up there with the Pat Buchanan Culture War speech from 1992. And I'm like, I'll go back and watch those, and there's my hour, or like, what was it, like 2 hours that Rush was on
Mhm.
stage. It was fantastic. So
Yeah, it
I mean,
was
that
it
was
was
great
a
stuff.
great speech. One thing about that speech is it's kind of like, if you want to know what conservatives should do, it's whatever the opposite. It's like George Costanza, do the opposite of your instinct. And that CPAC, everybody was expecting a somber occasion, a very negative speech, and he went up there with like optimism, and it like raised the roof. That makes me sound so old. Also, back on the weight loss. that's when both Rush and I kind of both saw ourselves on stage, and he lost like 80 pounds from that too. And I wrote an article right after he died called My Last Letter to Rush Limbaugh, and kind of talked, because Rush and I mean, I wouldn't say I'm friends with him or anything, but we actually have communicated. You know, I never talked about it until after he died, but he paid for me to go to fat camp for a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in my 20s, when I, you know, had talked to his wife at the time about some of that stuff. So, yeah, I was a Rush baby for sure. And
Oh, is that
there,
you right
yeah,
there?
yeah, that's me right there. I'm the other big person in all black. It's very slimming.
That's incredible. I mean, this is seriously is one of the greatest speeches, and you were right. You not only were there, you were helped organize. This is it's amazing. Oh my goodness gracious. I'm going to go watch it. I'm going to download this. I'm going to bring it to work tomorrow. I'm just going to watch this again because a lot of what he says here is still relevant, just like the Pat Buchanan Culture War speech. I mean, there's certain things that like you replace a couple of references, but those are some of those things over time. Like it's like watching a Golden Girls episode. If you can get away from them mentioning Gorbachev or John Sununu, I think you can just replace them with today's, and it still is pretty contemporary. But Lisa, thank you so much for being on here on the podcast. Can't wait to put this out this week, and it's very timely. But I could also probably go back years from now and listen to this, and it's still as timely, just as the CPAC Rush Limbaugh speech and Pat Buchanan and everything. But again, Lisa, thank you so much for being there. Please go support her, support writers, support online people, especially extremely online people like myself here in this Check Your Brain podcast. Lisa, again, thank you so much. And again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right. And this has been the Check Your Brain podcast. My name is Tony Mazur. If you want more podcasts where I even do solo episodes where I just rant and rave about all the other nonsense that's happening, kind of what has been mentioned in this podcast, go to patreon.com/Tony Mazur. For just $3 a month, you get all that plus video and early access to guests like Lisa. So go there if you want more. I'm also on Rumble. I'm going to put stuff on Odyssey. I kind of got to spread myself around to get my name out there a little bit, get away from being old radio Tony to Tony does a podcast and is trying to be a regular Renaissance man nowadays. So thank you again, everybody, for checking out the show. And I'll be back with you with another free episode of the Check Your Brain podcast coming up next week, wherever you are watching or listening to this podcast. Bye, everybody.